So, okay. So this is, you can just see it'll be lowering it just a little bit. It'll be the side view. And whoops. And then we can get that. Great. So just when you're reading, as long as you're in here, you're fine. So John, I'll let you introduce Donald.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And Donald, make sure you mention your playing your Albuquerque.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Again, almost I think all of you know Donna Levering, and one of the most respected poets in Santa Fe and sought after teacher, workshop leader. Donald's done a number of workshops for us here and in the previous location in Albuquerque, the previous Poetry Playhouse location. And we were really delighted when in I think February you asked us to publish Man, Moth, and the Gospel of Possibility, which which are poems that form the basis for a theatrical performance that was a set by Barbara Melman, who wonderful Santa Fe artist who did the image on the cover. Denise Weaver Ross also was the cover editor as well, and Gary Barton on synthesizer. It was just an amazingly delightful performance, and happy to hear that it will return to Albuquerque in October at the Fusion Theater. And Donald can give you more info on that. So we were pleased, really pleased, continue to be really pleased to be part of this enterprise. And Donald has too many books and too many awards to go through all of them, but I do notice that he won the Robinson Jeffers Torhouse Prize, which is particularly cool because in June Jules and I visited Tor House and Hawk Tower in Carmel, California. So that was like, wow. Anyway, so anyway, always a delight to hear Donald Levering.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit in the bar.
Right. Thank you, John. And thank you all for coming. What a environment here. This is really, really nice. You can see the Sandias in back there. So I do want to also thank John and Jules for publishing Man, Moth, and the Gospel of Possibility. And thanks to Leslie for also reading tonight. We read together at the Harwood.
Yes.
In 2008. I looked it up. It was 2008. Yeah.
There for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a pleasure to read with you again, Leslie. So I'll talk a little bit. The first few poems I'm going to read are from the Man, Moth, and the Gospel of Possibility. The idea for that book came from one poem by Elizabeth Bishop called Man, Moth, in which she envisioned a hybrid creature, human moth. And this person was in New York City and scaled the skyscrapers and rode the trains and was not altogether always welcomed by the people. He was often scared in his situation. But that was the trigger. So I wrote a series of poems then on this idea of the man moth figure. And then for the script, what we did, we had two of us reading the poems, and we had a style in which we had repetition going on between the two readers, and it was something a little different, and I think it was it was liked well enough that we had sold out houses. And at the Fusion Theater, it's going to be October 8th and 9th at 7 o'clock. So, and we will have the same musician. He did play a synthesizer, but that was one of 7 instruments that Gary Barton played. He's quite a genius. He composed all the music and played 7 instruments, sort of at one time. It's just to watch that is, I think, worth the price.
You probably would have done the art for it too.
Right. Okay, I think that's enough preliminary, and so I'll just read one of the poems. And this one, so Man Moth, his father was a moth, and his mother was a human. And so Man Moth speaks. Patrimony. Others of dual natures hide in closets, but I'll confide, my father is a moth. It sounds improbable, I know. How could he and my holy Homo sapiens mother have connected, much less how could they have mated? But what matters more to me is who I've come to be. From father's side came wiry eyebrows, jittery antics, my lamp dance. From him, too, tendencies to disguise and tease. Under beret or cap, I conceal antenna nubs, abuzz with hurts and blips and humming portents, beetle clackfests. Likewise, from my father moth come yearnings for overhauls of form, and the itch for yearly pilgrimage. Let's not forget Dad's most fanciful gift. When conditions are just so, velvet wings unfold to catch a thermal updraft. So several of the poems in the book begin with an epigraph, which is a direct quote from the Elizabeth Bishop poem, and this is one of those. And the poem is called Facing the Wrong Way. And she's talking about Man Moth getting onto trains and subways and not facing the direction that the train is going. And so the epigraph is Man Moth always seats himself facing the wrong way. Facing the wrong way, not to second guess Miss Bishop, but I wouldn't call my seating preference wrong. Perhaps she believed facing forward is an optimist posture, like looking toward, welcoming what's to come. Elizabeth might have supposed I'd rather be ensconced inside a dusty closet, chewing on nothing new, than rolling with the train's momentum into the unknown. If she were here, I might suggest the forward-facing passenger's view isn't always sanguine. It could rather be an anxious scan of the horizon to feel one's in control, all the while perseverating, what if the train barrels through my station without stopping? What if a mass of migrant moths encamps, clogging the tracks, leaving me stranded in some hinterland? What if the cars ahead begin to deconcatenate, coming off the rails? Who knows what vagaries may hijack us, reroute our clanking tons to unplanned destinations? Just now, I am content to sit and read the poetess, glancing up to witness what we've passed backwards, assured that sometime behind our shoulders we shall arrive somewhere. And the last of the poems I'll read from this is called Ostracize. It's a long poem. We find out in this that Man Moth has some companion man moths, and really, this poem is a primary poem bringing out a theme of the book, which is Man Moth is an other. And so he experiences what people who are different or in a lower caste, quote unquote, in our society, what they experience. Ostracized. My eyes roll up in my head, antennae sprout from my skull. Tender wing buds poke through my holy sweater. I rise from the leaf-packed floor, circle the city's orioles, and return to the forest. People rocking past glimpse me, drying my outstretched wings in the slipstreams of their trains. They clothe me in abhorrence. They claim my kindred and I were bred in catacomb bones. They blame us for eclipses, berate us for catastrophes. They chase us away from their mirrors and lamps, away from their cardigans and scarves. They pelt us with naphthalene hailstones. We retreat to the scar-faced moon and circle back to the auction of the wardrobes of the dead. We come back, wrapping windows at dusk, back with our spooky antennae, back with our restlessness. We flap dust off our wings, shake loose from heaps of threads, startle out of closets, and rise once more to bear their obsessions, ransack their hope chests, chew through their hereafter, and wear their dread. It keeps going. On the bus from the Blue Depot, the driver hands me a transfer to the backside of the moon. I'm shunned like a queer uncle. I tuck in my wings to rest against the rattling window. I sputter and tap the glass. I babble to myself, musty stories full of holes. My eyes fill with river light. 28 nights I dwell in shafts and stairwells cloaked in leaf mold. And when I return, what the citizens want is someone to don suitable vestments, perform familiar rituals. They do not want some mystic subject to shamanic fits, a shiftless crooner with a suicidal enthrallment with illuminators. Not some hipster flying high, picking up transmissions of unbidden gospels. They have no room in their schools and cafes, no room in their minds for the wings of a man-sized moth. People stare at my veined wings pulsing. They are repulsed, yet cannot look away from my long and slender tongue. Thank you. So we're away from man moth now. Now we're in Central Europe, in a forest during World War II. This poem is based on a diary from a writer named Aaron Appelfeld, an Israeli writer, and the epigraph is by Appelfeld. Words had less currency than faces and hands for knowing whom I could trust. Words from the woods. A table heaped with goose feathers. My mother and aunts around it, stuffing feathers into bedding. Uncle Harmon and his frayed yarmulke, noodling his button accordion. Papa with his book in the overstuffed chair. How they all shone in the candlelight. Our house smelled of apples baking. A knock came to the door. An officer read a proclamation. It was the last I saw of my mother. They had run out of boxcars, so they marched us to the camp. 9 days of blisters and thirst. They put me with skeleton children. Papa's last words, don't talk. Watch how things are done. I was 10. How I escaped, I won't say. No telling when I may need to do it again. Wandering forests and farms, I lived on mushrooms and bugs and scraps I begged from peasants, using signs, pretending to be mute. Hidden in the woods, I counted train cars passing, I counted heads. In the dark, I counted crusts of bread. 2 years I was friends with forest animals and stranger to men. Once I came on a pumpkin burst in the road. The pulp was mashed into mud, but I retrieved hundreds of seeds and toasted them on a scrap of tin. Little Fire was my friend. Little Fire and a silver fox who shared my feast of seeds, neither thinking it odd. For wasn't I the only person shivering that night in the bog by the river when the frogs began? Chirping, croaking, blatting, and big ones boomed while peepers tooted, and all were moving toward the river. I was the only person blessed to witness them, and heedless of me, they hopped past by the hundreds. And I was twice blessed to be frightened into a sweat by the giant stag standing on hind feet, head tilted so his antlers seemed like a crown. He didn't speak, yet he did. Words from the woods before words. So Jane and I were in Norway a few years back, and we met a woman who was on a fox farm, and she spoke candidly to us about her life on a fox farm. Fox farmer's wife, Boy, Norway. Even with our hundreds, we take care to keep the kits together with their mothers in the same cages. Besides, my husband's family has always farmed foxes. The men have always taught the boys how to hammer together the sheds that house the long rows of cages. Fathers repeatedly caution how quickly foxes flee to forest if a hasp is left unlatched. Sons are shown how to feed them scraps from fishermen's catch and the ways they breed the silver and the red. We each have our chores. My youngest son takes a short rake to dredge the muck that falls through the cages to the floor. He hauls it away in buckets. My husband and his hired hands slaughter and skin the yearlings. Our daughters and I stand in the barns where we see our breath, curing and tanning the pelts. September, my husband's brothers and cousins come to pack the furs into trucks. We drive through the first snows and through the 1,001 tunnels from here to Helsinki's fur market. I've never told my husband that I glimpse animals flitting across the tunnel walls swept by our headlamps. I've imagined a herd of oryx, a giant bear, thundering mastodons, and when I get tired, monsters like men with heavy fur. The deeper we drive into the mountain's marrow, the more I'm full of fears that we'll smash into a runaway logging truck, or the tunnel lights will fail and we'll be swallowed down to the mineral core. Sometimes the sweating tunnels go on so long my brain is tricked into night, into memories of walking late under summer stars beside the long, low sheds, listening to vixens nervously circling their cages, their sharp barks. In private, I cry for the foxes. I dream their cages fly open and they escape to the woods. But they always return to burrow into our walls, digging their dens just the other side of the bed where I lie with my husband. The kits scrabble and mew me awake. I don't think this one, even though it's kind of surreal, I don't think it needs an introduction. The fat man eyes Greenland. Nowhere can we evade the clamor of his craving to shovel in this misnamed empire of snow and ice. People pray once he has crammed his bleak insides with an expanse of whiteness, he'll be satisfied. But no, already he's scheming to claim the northern lights so he can drape them over the nation while his crimes get buried in permafrost. He tucks a napkin under his chin and bites into a calving glacier. He'd probably finish it off if it weren't for the Inuits' sled dogs who smell his trail of treachery and refuse to be hitched to this heavy two-legged chasing after his appetite. So this one is it's based on the story of Circe in Homer's Odyssey. She was daughter of Helios and an ocean nymph. But the main thing is she was the witch of the island of Aiaia. And Odysseus' sailors were kind of rude to her, and so she did something to them. And this is this poem doesn't have anything to do with the film that many of you have probably seen, but it's after Madeline Miller's book called Circe. The Witch of Aiaia. That's Aiaia is the name. It's Aiaia, name of the island. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a Greek island. The herbs mixed into wine, the chanted charm with the will to witch, turn men into what they would be. Some need scarcely a swill, for already greed has narrowed their eyes. Some try to disguise who they are by wearing blue suits and red ties. But in spite of their ruses, as they sneak her silverware into their boots, the daughter of Helios isn't fooled. The reek left in the wake of their deeds is unmistakable. To Circe, it seems that their rudeness, their grunts and snorts as they stuff themselves with her food, are ways they beg to be made into pigs. She notes how they eye her packed pantry, their sly inquiries about the lack of a man in the house. They nearly squeal with delight, undressing her with their eyes. Oh, but first they will have more of her ambrosial wine with the black herbs. So with a few sips and her whispered syllables, their bodies become barrels of brute confusion. Such keen pleasures for her as she shoos them into their stinking sty are their looks of pleading and disbelief at noises they make when they try to deny they are men on the bodies of swine. Okay, so this is a poem about, I sort of tried to make this person an embodiment of archaeology, things that I think are fascinating about archaeology. So it's a woman who happens to be in this poem. She's a Neanderthal, and she comes to a present day party. And just a couple of words. When I say napping, it's not taking five. It's cutting flakes off of stones, and all is AWL is a tool for poking holes in things. Our cousin arrives at the party. She's back with her cache of stone blades and her know-how of napping. Back from her mound of axe-making flakes, she's come with a snare for capturing hawks. With feather fossils and a notched awl, she comes bearing the knee of an auroch. She's back with handprints on ochred walls, with rubbings of an enormous horse and the wingspan of a man-sized bat. Returned from old volcano flows with intaglios of persons in last life poses, She's back blowing flute notes. She returns stone flute notes. She returns smudged with ash and eyes full of forest fires, home with a thunder stick and rain dance. She comes to us with a scourge of sadness, with boxes of teeth. With boxes of teeth, lost to famine, downcast with a bag of rickets, bowed femurs. She's here to trace barter streams, to answer which artifacts were toys or amulets against bad dreams. She climbs down from sky burials with the raven's exclamations, her illusions about death picked clean. When she arrives at our soiree, she inquires, how does that ivory-toothed cabinet make music? Why is nobody dancing? She samples appetizers, sips some wine, taps the disposable cup and asks, how long do your plastics last? What's on the skewers tonight? Okay. So this will be my last poem. And thank you once again for coming and enjoying this poetry fest. This poem takes place in Thailand, and it's set in an elephant refuge. There's a word in here, mahout, which is the people that live with the elephants, that take care of the elephants, and the fathers pass that job down to their sons. Elephant refuge near Chiang Mai. 6,000 wild elephants so far have evaded the march of 7-Elevens across Thailand. Tucked into a clearing beside jungle, their cousins note our arrival in their home next to their keeper's village. They stand flanking their littler ones or walk calmly shifting their tons between tree trunk feet, swaying their heads, flapping their ears like giant palm leaves. One looks at us askance with our cameras, another pretends to be invisible. All of them see better than we between dusk and dawn. Across the years, they remember who was kind, who shackled them with fear, and where to find water. Although not entirely free here, they are treated well, not forced to uproot trees. Here, no chains or whips, no withholding of food to do human stupid tricks. We visitors don red vests like those of their bahouts, whom the elephants trust. We're shown how to mash rice, mangoes, and pumpkin into fist-sized bonbons to pop into their mouths. We're led to the creek and are taught how to scrub the Himalayas of their skin. They shower us with their trunks. This one wants the sugar cane she can smell in your back pocket. Another can't be fed banana chunks fast enough. We're taught the size of the penis and how in must a male leaks secretions from its cheeks and goes berserk. Our stay among them concludes as another group of people arrives to learn what we just learned, how the behemoths hear through the ground with their feet, how the females choose their mates and raise the young and decide when and where their group will stay, how last month they mourned for one of their own who succumbed to constipation. All this gets repeated for their new guests, who will also get to feed and scrub them and be delighted when showered by their trunks. It is, after all, the elephant's job to help us believe in our mutual goodness, and it is better for them than hauling logs. Thank you.
That was delightful, Donald. Thank you. It's so great to have your poems out here in the Placitas wild. We have actually quail out here. A lot of batches of little quail have been showing up too, along with, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
And we have a little fox right here. Yeah. So I'd like to welcome Leslie Ullman coming from Taos. And this is the first time she's read here at the Poetry Playhouse, and it's a real treat to have her. And I've known her through other readings and her books, and she's author of 4 poetry collections. Well, it's got to be more than that because there's more out there. Essays. I've actually seen your journal articles, and when I was doing research for, poetic inquiry and writing. She's a teacher. She taught at the University of El Paso, where she established the bilingual MFA program. And she continues, I think, to teach at the low residency MFA at Vermont College of Fine Arts. She also does a lot of freelance manuscript consultations, guest teaching, and I think she's coming as a writer and a teacher, and I welcome you to read your poetry. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I've been following. I've known Jules and John, and I see them around, and I've seen pictures of this place on Facebook a lot, and they're lovely. And they remind me of where I lived in El Paso, which was just over the state line, kind of inching up on Las Cruces. And I miss the quail, and I miss the roadrunners that we had there, and you have them. But anyway, to see this place in person is just, it's lovely. And I really admire the literary citizenship of Jules and John, the things they do for the literary community. It's impressive and warm and fun. So thank you for including me.
Yeah.
And it's a delight to read with Donald. Your poems really travel places. They're just fun to hear. It must be fun to live in your head. I had 3 books out in very close succession, which kind of messed with my brain because one of the more recent ones was the oldest manuscript. And then I've been writing new work, and I really want to share that because there was something in one of your announcements that said we'd be reading from new work. So I'm kind of going in that direction, but I'm going to visit some books a little bit, a couple of the books. And the oldest manuscript, which came out fairly recently at UNM Press, is Unruly Tree, where I took Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt's oblique strategies for composers who are stuck. Have you guys heard of them? Mm-hmm. A lot of you have. They're a list of weird little prompts and phrases that are designed to and they made them into a deck of cards, and you're supposed to pick a card each day, and you get this weird phrase, and it's supposed to just jar you out of your normal lateral thinking, your normal obligatory rut. And they made no sense. I hadn't heard of them before, and I thought at first they were rough translations from another language. They were that nonsensical, and I thought I'm going to take each one of these as a title for a poem, and I'm going to just make a poem out. And so I did all 110 of them. There were some really bad ones in there, and I kept 2/3 of them and made this book. So I'm just going to read a couple from out of here, but I really had fun with this. And what I loved was I really didn't know what I was going to do with each prompt. They didn't make sense. And some of them were sentences and some of them were just phrases. And I would just write it down, and I just sit and wait until something happened. And I ended up writing about a lot of different things, certainly about music and art and process and, a lot of that stuff. It was a lot of fun. And then some wild cards. I'm going to read Infinitesimal Gradations. This one is about art. Infinitesimal Gradations. How did Turner nudge pencil sketch to wash of blended oils to moonlight filtered through a scrim of cloud? How did he move from architectural edge and precision to nimbus, speed, suggestion, the early steam engine, a blur thrusting itself through English mist, or a ship tossed between froth and sky. He left a legacy of slow dissolves without evidence of daub or bristle, as though no coarse body bearing its feuds and failings and telltale Cockney accent wielded the brush. As though light breathed like thought over landscapes seen from a height, turrets washed in sunrise, the parting of Hero and Leander barely emerging from the densities of time. A ship on the verge of its wreck, prefiguring its own disappearance, as the artist himself disappeared, leaving suggestions of wholeness emerging from proffered parts, like the full ghost moon that sometimes swells, shadow soft, behind the new sliver of moon on a clear night. A fullness so see-through, so maybe not there, we wonder if we pieced it ourselves from a fragment of vanished light. This is one of the few poems in the book that's a little bit personal, but the title invited me there. What mistakes did you make last time? I counted wrong. I used too many abstractions. I missed the exit. I fell off the dock walking backwards in the dark. I mistook the distinguished guest for a waiter. I kept talking after I'd made my point. I revved the engine thinking I was in reverse. I made my horse cross the cattle guard. I forgot the quiche was in the oven. I forgot to buckle the top buckle. I said blackface while giving a lecture on Berryman's dream songs. I forgot the emergency brake. I ate salty chips while drinking single malt straight up. I didn't look at my notes. I didn't cut enough. I cut too much. I didn't proofread. I didn't honor my boundaries. I lost my temper. I rushed the ending. Once I sat quietly and waited, empowered by silence, but forgot to do it again. How many of us have had that experience? So then, this book is hard to read from because it kind of has a plot, and I either have to spend the whole time reading from it or just kind of tell you about it and read a couple of things. But I think I may pick up on some of the themes in the new poems I want to read you. So this I wrote during the pandemic when I felt like the whole world had forgotten about me and I was willing to forget about the world. And I was just going to write something to please myself. So I wrote something that was fairly autobiographical, where I made imagined parts of myself into characters, little soul and the selves being what we start out with when we grow up in families and we feel like square pegs and round holes, as most of us probably did. And then as we kind of integrate ourselves and maybe find some essence. And I think that's an archetypal thing. And I decided to make characters and kind of reinvent parts of my own life to make that trajectory. And what I found, well, in the beginning, one of the things I was trying to do when I began these poems was I decided I really wanted to figure out something about my ancestry. And I come from a very, very, very assimilated German Jewish family. Everybody's been over here since the 1800s and nobody remembered anything. And I had friends who were looking into this stuff and looking into ancestral memory. And I didn't know how to do that, but I decided to maybe let little soul make some guesses, because sometimes your imagination can fill in the blanks. I didn't get as far as I would have liked, but I did end up thinking a lot about what is the soul? And I ended up writing about the soul, I think, and I'm still writing about it. So I'm not going to get too much into this, but I'm trying to give you a synopsis. But I will give you, here's one poem where little soul is trying to do a homework assignment on ancestral memory, which she never gets very far, but she has the prompt, I learned to avoid. So this is third assignment, an attempt at revision. I learned to avoid firecrackers and cap guns, undercooked eggs, having our hair brushed by anyone but us, letting our toes touch lake muck, acting like a girl wanted our father to like us, being misunderstood. Criticism, how tenaciously it lingered, smoke from a grease fire, and so many ways to screw up. Too loud, too blah, hair out of control. Where's your sense of humor? Wearing something unbecoming, too serious, thin-skinned, not smart enough, not fun, not agreeable, not enough. Little soul wonders who of the ancestors might have hidden in wet fields and lived on stolen eggs. Who wasn't taught to read because she was a girl, whose wild hair belied her tribe and led to exile. Who wrote books that were burned, who was stoned for blasphemy or miraculous healings or dancing with abandon. Who learned to survive by erasure, by solitude, by keeping silent. Little soul wants to rewire the selves so schooled in caution. Maybe it wasn't about you. And then around the middle of the book, I have a suite of poems called 6 Lessons in Love. Because I was putting this together, I realized that our love lives are what they just beat us up and force us to evolve, and, force us to become more ourselves, but usually the hard way. So I have 6 poems in there, and they're kind of the middle of the book. And after that part of the book, the little soul poems become a little less self-involved, and they start thinking more about the world, and they start arguing with T.S. Eliot and Hadrian, and they branch out. And I'm still branching out, actually. But I'm going to read you one of the 6 lessons in love. This is called Borrowed. Say he is Pan with gentle hands, his eyes creased with mischief. He likes to roam at night, nothing but him and the stars, his blue gaze bright in his sleepless face. He says he wants to grow old with you, though he must keep you and have you keep yourself a secret. You know precisely at what point the pain will begin if he keeps coming around, calling your name softly in the pre-dawn stillness. Say he has kissed you once, then slipped away, flushed and dizzy, to the element he brought with him, the scent of night and the unsettling light of a sinking moon. Say you've made love once, and again he has vanished into the last tendrils of darkness. By day, he drives to work across the border to cut steel with a needle of flame. You can see him draping his arm along the truck's open window, his skin browning in the sun, and later treats kindly the woman he says he wants to stop living with. At night, your own house holds a throng of memories as echoes of other men who once thought you a discovery or the one person who understood them find their way in, along with grit from spring's first furious winds. Sometimes it's your ex muttering, worthless, glowering and refusing to talk, though he's told others he never stopped loving you. You left him and don't want to go back. But lately you curl over the part of yourself as though from a blow where love for him drove a deep root. And see how you turned and turned from that greenness until it dried, withered, and settled to ash. You trace its residue nights alone, while this other man is whistling or stirring gravy or washing the dog, seamless and easy in his double life. One morning, you're easing your skittery mare from the barn, tears filling your eyes for no reason, like blood washing dirt from a wound. When he appears in the doorway, the sun behind him, his hair where your hands may or may not rest, a bright nest spun against hard daylight. Say he is Mercury, Hermes, messenger riding the thermals. Say he's another crack in a heart that yearns, as hearts tend to do. in spring's restless weather. Perhaps this time it will leave a scar like soldered gold, seared, then annealed. Perhaps you hope the seasons will finally get through to you with their simple lesson: subtraction and replacement, the earth's loose skin stripping itself again and again. So I think probably I haven't left those themes behind. I did write one book after this, which is a bunch of self-portraits as totally non-human phenomena. It is so not about me, and it was really fun to write. And I don't know if I'll have a chance to read from it, but I think to keep a continuum for what I want to read next, I'm going to skip this for now. But it was really fun. Things like self-portrait as a weather map, self-portrait as a lab experiment. And it was a really nice foil to the Little Soul endeavor. Okay, so these are new poems. And I think this first one, called Education, which I modeled after a poem by Hilary Gravendick. I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's a beautiful poet. I studied, and I took that incantation. But I think maybe this kind of follows some of the trajectory of the Little Soul poems. Education. I studied the fleeting thrill of drumbeat and dance. I studied the soar and I studied the crash. I studied the broken heart and the gray weather that followed. I relinquished test scores and retorts that made me wrong. I learned the stronghold of not picking up the phone. I carried on in a silence that cradled me. I learned to mimic the meadowlark's gold song threading through snowmelt and thin March sun. I learned to turn away from the mirror. What did it know of light and shadow and the tender shades between? I studied the cliff and its temptations. I studied grievance until it lost its edge and I could speak on my behalf. I studied the translucencies of clouds and how their layers move at different speeds. Studied switchback, meadow, and which rocks would hold against thawing slopes. I studied fame, a flimsy garment in constant need of repair. I laid down the sword of myself and watched the soil open beneath the plow I became. I have a lot of poems where I just love a quote and I have to do something to work in dialogue with it. So this is called No One Knows How. And the quote is from a wonderful book by Kat Bohannon called Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 million years of human evolution. It's funny and it's rich. And even the footnotes, you have to read the whole thing. They're just too good. And her quote is, most animals are essentially lumpy donuts filled with ocean. There's the poem right there. Red tides ferrying oxygen, clear sweat rivers to cool exertion, mucus flushing germs, semen full of half-lives. We are 70% water. Our muscles ride its currents as we flee or fight, knead flour into dough, scale a cliff, lift a child, haul buckets in each hand to feed this essence. Mist rides our breath over the produce aisle, packed stadiums, and every cell phone. It swells to a tropical haze over couples engaged in argument or a long kiss or vigorous conversation. We women head into the day disguised as solids, our irrigated skin feigning carapace, our clothing a veneer of industry and cunning, easy to overlook the element we came from before we had legs, along with its long labor as it carved the earth into gorge and arroyo, networks for transport, massaging boulders to pebbles and then sand, before it was trapped and rerouted into kilowatts and BTUs. Whitman, that arrow shooting selfhood into the thin air we share, said he and we contain multitudes. We women might put it differently. Our bodies more estuary than arrow. We didn't have words for it as children. And lately, an ancient species of sea creatures has been detected living 10 miles down in a darkness so intense it must make its own light. Autobiographia. I was a failure at making cakes that didn't sag in the middle. I was a failure at growing basil, a failure at recognizing compliments, a failure at calculating sales tax, even with a calculator. And I failed to close the patio door the night the skunk came in. When I'm older, I will forget my grocery list and lose my credit card twice in 1 year. One will turn up in the pocket of an old vest. I was a failure at remembering birthdays and forgot to write thank you notes unless my mother admonished me from the other side. How long has that cobweb been dangling over my desk? I can't bring myself to address the dust layered on top of all the books I should be culling in preparation for my own departure. But the nights here are a velvet surround, the air cool and cleansing at 8,000 feet. Every morning I wait forgiven. The skunk ran into the guest room. I closed the door for the night to let him settle. I failed to remember what I did the next morning. He's not here now. I'm gonna do a little nostalgia trip here. In the 50s, no qualms about sending kids to walk alone to and from school, shuffling leaves and hopping over sidewalk cracks and making sure to look both ways before you cross the street, which I did during entire crossings, my head swiveling back and forth just to make sure, as though perched atop a wind-up doll. Dolls were rarely on my mind. I was a horse or Davy Crockett or a girl I invented so I could call her Jenny. No citations for burning leaves at the curb after we raked, then jumped into the piles and buried ourselves in the brown leaf smell of October, which soon became smoke lacing the tightened air, sending autumn all over the neighborhood, but setting nothing else on fire. No cause for intervention if a parent slapped a child in the face when her argument or whining wouldn't stop. There was in those days scant knowledge of what ached beneath the surface of a child's no. As one born, according to then custom, to a knocked out mother and never put to the breast, I took years to feel at home in my body, willingly give hugs, or resign myself to being a girl. Dolls were rarely on my mind. I collected seashells, porcelain horses, and polished stones, and read stories by flashlight after bedtime so I could dwell in someone else's body. No red flags over Spam, Twinkies, white grains refined to paste or powder, roasts and chicken sealed in fat and seared over coals soaked in lighter fluid, ashtrays and matches in every living room, smoke filling kitchens and closed cars. There was nothing we were told not to consume. Few of us were pudgy. All of us thought we were. The girdles and cinched waists of movie stars and Sears models having engendered in us rules we already knew would be impossible to follow.
Are you okay with the light?
I am.
You see, okay.
Don't have too many more.
Yeah.
What came next? Another letter I don't remember receiving slips from a book I haven't picked up in years, marking a page where I once underlined passages whose urgency now escapes me, terse, stoic, defiant in a way that might appeal to suburban adolescents. Oh, this one, The Myth of Sisyphus. One of the only coherent philosophical positions is revolt. And all man has is his ability, is lucidity and his definite knowledge of the walls surrounding him. I must have felt myself on the brink of a great escape. This isn't the first time I've encountered an unrecognizable version of myself. Each time reading these found missives, my brain feels airy and anonymous, like those tiny houses on HGTV with minimal closet space and no wall big enough for a decent bookshelf. Are people drawn to such spaces in order to erase themselves? Where in those fey bathrooms does one keep toothpaste and a toothbrush? Not to mention in the living room, Casas Grandes pots collected before they became dear, or books from whose pages bits of one's past might drop out at any moment. Dear L, I hope you made it home without incident from the house party / conference / wedding / blind date we almost didn't keep. Letter by letter, my past replays itself as a novel I'm reading for the first time. Our last conversation made me want to know you better. Let's stay in touch. Fondly, D/G/S. Okay, I am getting 3 poems from the end. I've got a couple of really new ones that are kind of fun to read. They may end up getting revised, but I want to share them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is sort of tentatively titled Sunday Morning because it's like Sunday morning thoughts, but there's a lot of poems called that, so I'm not sure if I can put that. I might keep it in parentheses where it is now. I have never sought shelter in this or that religion, never heard a call, never felt touched by the promise or bound by the mandates of a God who may once have been pure mercy and benevolent wisdom, a kindness guarding every move the world made to become itself. Before men, yes, men, turned him, always him, into a kind of black hole demanding appeasement. Think of the Greeks, repeatedly saved and punished for no particular reason. All my dead have disappeared. I don't presume to know where. By fire and forgetting, by the dogged river of my days. I can't know I'll see them in another life, or that the stippled butterfly that grazes my shoulder en route to a far-off meeting with its tribe is my father checking in. I use ellipses a lot because thought itself never stops, not even in sleep. What is closure but a capitulation to fatigue? There is often a second wind, another phrase, a new window cracked open. Is anything ever really finished? If I must declare a faith, let it be to something that doesn't scare me away from any book or alley or insect of this world I find myself in, from anyone who speaks a language I've never heard before, or bind me to anything that requires a temple, a throne, a coffer, a big stick. And this is another fresh one called Reticent Mentor. You have a right to know when I'm feeling ignorant, that I too am a blank slate, a spirit slowly filling in. The first time a pliant soul found durable the loosely gathered knot of my thoughts, I understood my mind as mine. So never mind the family table where disagreement ends in a click-shut door that makes you wrong. Never mind the cafeteria smelling of sloppy joes and griddle grease, where cliques bound to their speech and dress codes leave you emptied as you dump trash from your tray. If you rise in the morning feeling inexplicably hopeful, and if I have any say, you will keep that freshness tucked away like a crisp white square well into the day. A secret, a caffeine thrust that lets you seize a thought like no one else's and ride it to unfamiliar heights. I will fold it in a transparent wing. I will be a cup, a crucible, then clear a soft patch of soil to receive your landing. I will offer the first stone in a wall that keeps out noise and leaves you room to unfurl the petals and, yes, the thorns of what you need to become. And this is my last one, and it brings the soul back in. I'm still figuring out what the soul is, and I'm enjoying it. This is written after a quote by Nazim Hikmet: "Even at 70, you'll plant olive trees." And know the sky, wherever you happen to look up, still belongs to you as much as to anyone. Even when the glass and brick of construction next door cut it off. Even when your glass of time will never again be half full. And the Johnny Mathis album you listened to the year of your first kiss, your memory still can play it, every note intact. His voice all swoon and promise, even as you hadn't yet decided if you liked that tongue suddenly claiming real estate in the depths of your mouth. Even after the flare and collapse of subsequent kisses, to which, over the years, you surrendered willingly. Only now do you see how full the glass was then, with your handful of years, their trial runs and minor regrets, while the rest stretched ahead, vague as a cirrus sky. Now your age is a number that startles you like that first tongue in your mouth. But the earth holds you as it always has, so why not give it another tree to remind it still knows what to do beneath skewed jet streams and the spread of excavation? And who's to say the soul doesn't surface like cheekbone and the shape of the skull under thinning hair as the years whittle the body down? Doesn't delight in the tang of olives and the kiss of earth between the fingers? Doesn't put out leaves of its own. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, both Leslie and Donald. I'm going to thank you to our Zoom audience, and I'm going to shut off the recording.